Next on our agenda today is Dr. Ralf Bodelier. He is joining us remotely, so if we could pull up Ralf for the next presentation. Now, Ralf is fascinated by progress and how it affects the lives of ordinary people, close to home and those far away in the slums of Africa and Asia. A philosopher and journalist, he, together with others, laid the foundations for the European eco-modernism movement. And he wants to talk to us today about why intellectuals should be taught by technologists. We're very pleased to have you. Thank you for joining us here at WEEF 2022. Perhaps you could first tell us a little bit about your background and where you're based.
Well, I'm based in the Netherlands in a town called Tilburg, about 200,000 people. I'm a philosopher. I did a PhD in philosophy, but I'm trained as a theologist, and I studied history for a while. I finished my study history. And I'm concerned, like many people, about climate and biodiversity and poverty all over the world. But with Replanet, the organization, or we are eco-modernists, we try to change it a bit. And that's, of course, the topic I want to talk about.
And I just wanted to start with a short question for you. Is there a person or a company that inspires you in terms of ethical issues?
Yeah, I know it's a bit boring to talk about Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and these kind of people, but because they were brave and they were speaking out and they were very targeting the topics, still these are my big inspirators. But always there is my wife and my father, these kind of people who are very important too. Sure.
Thank you very much. So I believe you have a presentation for us. Is that correct? There we go.
That's right. There is.
So there we go. I hand over the audience to you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to walk you through an idea and an organization and a strategy that's called Replanet. And previous, our name was Eco-Modernists, and we started on the continent, European continent, the organization a few years ago. Then there was a manifesto, and it was called the Eco-Modernist Manifesto. And the ideas that came from the manifesto, somewhere 10, 15 years ago, we imported into Europe, into the Netherlands. At that time, we wrote some books about it. And let me show you here. And the first book written about eco-modernism, or what is Replanet today, we wrote in 2016. It was called Eco-Modernism, New Thinking, New Ideas about growth and green. Then we published a book together as a bunch of authors. It's called More. So it tells the story that we are living in an abundance here of time and money and ideas and whatever, and we should use them. So not consuming, not degrowth, but growing more and more is more fresh air, more nature, more alleviation of poverty, these kind of things. And a few months ago, I published a book. Everything is in Dutch, unfortunately. It's called Long Live Man. Well, we make it with 10 billion people. And as you know, today, we visited number 8 billion somewhere in the world. And my answer on this question, can we make it? Will we survive with 10 billion people? Is yes, we can survive, we will survive. This won't be the topic of this talk. It will be about Replanet, about eco-modernism. Oh yeah, we changed our name in Replanet last year. Well, this Replanet, we started in the Netherlands with these books, and now there is a network of people and organizations call themselves Replanet or still eco-modernist all over Europe. So in UK and Germany up to the Nordic countries. It's not a company or whatever. They are grassroots organizations. They started from a few people who were fascinated by the eco-modernist ideas. And they started a group. And the main thing that we are doing is raising awareness for a few big problems and handing over, presenting solutions to these problems. And I think the problems, everybody knows what kinds of problems they are. As, again, hunger and poverty and biodiversity, pressure on biodiversity, climate change. But I think the solutions that we are presenting are rather new, or probably completely new, but I want to talk about it now. But first of all, we share the same values as the environmental movement. So like the Greens, like the Greenpeaces or the Green Lefts or the Greens or whatever they're called, we call them the ecologists. And these values are rather simple. We want to live in a prosperous world with an abundant biodiversity, and we hope to curb climate change and to avoid the disasters that are coming to our world within a few decades or centuries. So we share the same values, but there are a few, probably two very, very big differences. One of them is that eco-modernists, they want prosperity for every human being. So on Earth, it's not only for us, but even for people in Africa and Asia and Latin America who are today still poor and who lack the ability of energy that we have, or at least that we had until a few months ago. So we want a big bet on what's called poverty reduction. We think that solving environmental problems that must go hand in hand with combating poverty. And that's something that's different with the ecologists. When they think about less consuming, degrowth, change in the capitalist system, we think they don't take into consideration that many, many people are very poor and they want to escape from poverty, and we should help them. So that's one. The other one is, let me see, here it comes. We, the eco-modernists or the replanteers, we have much more faith in modern technology. From GMOs and CRISPR-Cas to nuclear energy to precision fermentation to cultured meats. For us, ideology is not important. For us, important is what works and not what fits into this ideology. So we think, we hope, we lack a very narrow-minded ideology, and we are very open to all the solutions to solve these big problems that we are facing at the moment, and of course that people faced since humanity is there. Well, I want to walk you through four subjects that Replanet is pushing forward. First of all, is global prosperity for all, not only for us, but even for people in Burkina Faso and Malawi and Afghanistan. The second one is clean energy for all, not only clean energy for us, and still billions of people are cooking on biomass, for instance. We want to rethink food and reform agriculture. We are not against farmers, no, not at all. We think they are very, very hard-working people trying to provide the best food there is, but we think we could do better, and even the farmers can do better. And we want to set nature free. So these are the four topics I want to present to you. I think I have to start with global poverty. For me and for most of the Replaneteers, this is the most important one. This is a picture, a small picture of a big city, and everyone thinks this city is somewhere in the US or in Europe or even in Asia. Well, this is Cape Town in South Africa. And if you look to Joburg or Durban or Port Elizabeth, we'll see the same pictures. We see big, huge urbanized landscapes where people are living in prosperity already. That's completely different from the views that we will see in the media every now and then. When we think about Africa, we see big bellies of children who are malnourished. We see soldiers with guns. We see people in dire poverty. Well, but this is the future of Africa. The future is not poverty. The future is prosperity. This picture, the second one in the same sequence, is a food court. And if I would ask you, where is this food court? Again, I think you would answer somewhere in Europe or America or in Asia or whatever. Well, this is Kinshasa. Kinshasa is the capital of DRC, Congo. So many people already are well-to-do in Congo and other countries in Africa that they can afford a meal at McDonald's or KFC, of course. You can ask yourself, well, these are the best meals you can get. But however, it's nice to go to a food court every now and then and enjoy a meal from all over the world. Well, many people will say, today we have the 8 billion human being on Earth. So all of them are consumers, and they're consuming our resources, consuming fresh air, emitting CO2 into the air or whatever. And of course, when there are more people will consume. But, and again, this is Africa. This is Google. I forgot what is Google Kenya, or Google Tanzania, or even Google South Africa. But you know, all these people who are joining us these days because of population growth, they're not only consumers, they are producers too. They not only have mouths, but they have brains and hands, and they can work and they produce, and they can change the world for better. And this is for us very important. Global prosperity means that people not only escape from poverty, but they can contribute to a better world. Well, this is the first topic. A second topic is clean energy for all. The ecologists are referring to the previous topic. Many people from the green movement say, we should not push Africa or Latin America or Asia to become as rich as we are because we are spoiling our world. Of course, we say, yes, we have to enable prosperity for them because from a moral point of view, it's obvious that people have rights to prosper, but they can contribute a lot to a better world for everyone. Then the second one is clean energy for all. Our friends from the green movement, they emphasize completely on solar and wind. And of course, that's what we do too. We think solar energy and wind energy is very, very important, and we can do more, and we can build more wind turbines on the shores of Europe, whatever. We can cover every roof in the Netherlands and Germany with solar panels. So this is a very, very important movement. But we are proposing that we should build more nuclear power plants. And the reason is very simple. The sun is not always shining. At its best, the sun is shining half day, because half of the day it's night and half of the day there is sunshine at its best. And wind is not always blowing. There are days, mainly in winter, I call it dunkel, I forgot the name. There's no wind and it's very cold and a lot of clouds in the air, and sometimes it's snowing. Well, we don't have wind, we don't have solar energy, and then we have to go back to more old-fashioned ways of producing energy. Well, if we don't build more nuclear power plants, then we have to go back to fossil-fueled power plants, coal, gas, oil, whatever. Because the green movement is opposing fiercely nuclear energy, it means that the backload of our modern energy system has to be coal and oil and gas. And we think it's much, much better to invest in nuclear energy. And the reason is very simple. Nuclear energy, it only uses a very small amount of space compared to all the other sources of energy. There is no CO2 emitted by nuclear power plants. There is no air pollution. It's very, very safe. It's as safe as solar and wind. So we should invest in nuclear energy, and that's what Replanet is standing for. And we are campaigning a lot in Brussels and with our own national governments to build more nuclear power plants. In the Netherlands now there is a plan to build 2 more. We only have 1, a very small one. Well, let's go, let me see. Yes. Set nature free. Of course, biodiversity is very, very important, and biodiversity is under pressure. Everyone knows. Well, what our friends from the green movement say is we should go back to, let's say, organic agriculture. Less pesticides, less fertilizer, more people are involved. That's, of course, a great idea. The more birds and more plants in the fields. And that's right. But our problem is, we Planeteers, we emphasize on that. Our problem is that organic nature uses a lot of space. Because the yields are lower than in common agriculture, it means you need more space and even more because there are 2 billion people joining us the coming 50 years, that it will put a lot of pressure on forests, on swamps, on wetlands, on nature and on biodiversity. So we, the Planeteers, we are more happy with new forms of modern agriculture, that we can have a lot of yields from a very, very small amount of space. And it means if you can take a lot of yields from a very small amount, I think it's not correct English, but however, but if you get a lot of yields of a small space, then you set nature free, actually. And it means that nature can flourish. So organic agriculture is not the way to go. Well, the way to go is modern intensive agriculture. And then the last one is reform the food industry. And there are 2 ways that are very, very promising. One of them is cultivated meat. I think you heard a lot about it. It means that you take a stem cell from a cow or a pig or whatever, and you put it in a bioreactor. You add a lot of fuel, electricity. Actually, I don't know how it works exactly, but in the end, you have a hamburger or a steak or whatever. Cultured meat is very, very promising. It started in 2013. The first cultured meat hamburger was presented by Dutch professor Mark Post. And then by that time it costs 250,000 euros to build or to produce one. But today the prices went down to 5 euros for a hamburger. It will go down even more. And the future, we think, is a future without a lot of cattle, without pigs and cheap and or whatever. So cultured meat is a future. And what we are doing as Planeteers, we try to already address the audience, people who are following us, and more than that, to emphasize now, to enhance this new technology, because we fear that some people will be afraid of this new kind of technology and are going to reject it, and that would be a big loss, because we think we can do a lot of nice and great things with cultured meat. Then the last one is precision fermentation. That's completely new. At least it was completely new for me when we started Replanet last year with it. Everybody knows about fermentation. We use fermentation for beer and for cheese and for yogurt. But precision fermentation, it means we can produce food with very specific strains of microorganisms like bacteria and yeast and microalgae and fungi. So again, you put plants. I make it very simple because I'm a philosopher and not a technologist. You put plants and again a bioreactor, you add this very specific strains of microorganism and you can produce new food. And it would be possible, it is possible, more and more people are convinced about that in the end we can skip cattle out of the complete chain in agriculture. We need a diverse, a great variety of vegetables. We need an industry in cultured meat, an industry in precision fermentation, and we don't need animals anymore. And that would relieve the earth from one of the big problems you have today, And that's livestock all over the world who use a lot of soy and produce a lot of methane and whatever. So, in the end, that's our idea. We Replanteers, we are not the researchers and not the producers of cultured meat or precision fermentation or whatever, but we try to change the narrative. We try to influence people through the media, through social media, in talks like this, that we should go into a completely new direction with the same values as the Green Movement, but now with a lot of space for new technology and new initiatives. And if you want to join us, please use our subscribe to our newsletter, www.replanet.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ralf, for that very informative presentation and a different look maybe at these challenging issues that we're discussing here around sustainability and ethics. One of the questions I have on this topic is that one of the statements that you made is that maybe we need to have some more faith in technology. We need to look at what works and less on ideology. Now, if we look at maybe the best known technology engineer in the world, Elon Musk, he has plenty of money and he's definitely very keen on technology. Is the problem that society generally has with him is that his ideology is wrong?
I don't know a lot about the ideology of Elon Musk. What I know, what you know, of course, that he gave the Tesla to the world. And of course, the Teslas are still driving on fossil fuels, I know, because fossil fuels generate electricity, whatever. But we need electric cars in the end. At the time we get rid of fossil fuels, electric cars have to be there. We know that he provided Ukraine with satellites. They can communicate in this war. And of course, I think he's making a mess out of Twitter these days. But his ideology, you cannot take it. At least for me, it's hard to visualize what his ideology is. It's more like an opportunist, I think. He's going from one side to the other side. But in the end, of course, I think the underlying question is technology can do a lot of wrong. Think of the atom, the nuclear bomb in 1946. Even think of the invention of the machine gun. Sure, that's right. So, but we should not reject technology in its own. We should pick the technology that we love, we think can make the world a better place. And that's the majority of technology. And of course, we should curb or reject the technology that is making the world worse.
Exactly. I think one of the other points you were sort of making during the discussion was by being maybe an eco-realist rather than absolutist. We should embrace nuclear power as an option of one of the tools that we can use. And on the online chat, there was some discussion going back and forth. And so the question there is, how do we make the nuclear power station sustainably? And someone saying, well, we can use solar energy to do the manufacturing of the components and the building and everything as well. But then the statement comes back, yeah, but the solar panels themselves require lots of fossil fuels or have a large carbon footprint to build them. And this is one of the challenges I have. I mean, we know that solar energy is the way forward, but at the same time, am I making the problem worse by going for solar energy? Is photovoltaic maybe worse than I imagine it is?
Oh no, we have a lot of challenges, of course, even with solar energy. Many of these solar panels, after a few years, they will take them from the roofs and they send them to Africa. They are using them again, but in the end, they will end up on a garbage dump. So that's one of the challenges, I think, with solar energy. For now, the garbage of solar is not sustainable at all. It's the same for wind turbines. All of the wings of the wind turbines, now they are buried somewhere in the desert in the United States. But and it's the same problem, of course, with nuclear energy. Still, we have nuclear waste. I think it's not the problem that people make out of it, but of course there is waste. And we need a lot of concrete, a lot of steel to build these nuclear power stations. Sure, every source of energy has its trade-off. So what we should do, we should rank the sources of energy and to pick the ones which has the least trade-off. That's what we should do. And then I think nuclear energy is really moving to the top of all the energy sources we have. Sure, but it goes hand in hand with wind and power, and probably with completely new forms of energy that will come up the coming decades.
Now, as an engineer, I know what the word ethics means, but I think the problem is once we try to dig a little bit deeper, do you have any advice or guidance as to books or good websites where maybe we can explore in more depth what ethics means and how we might want to apply it to ourselves as engineers as we're working for employers, working for startups in trying to be better, to be more sustainable, to be more ethical?
Yeah, for me, I'm not, it probably is strange for a theologist and a philosopher, but I'm not that involved in ethics. For me, it's rather simple. It's still Immanuel Kant. And Kant says, every act you make, think of, would it be possible that should that act become a law that is necessary that applies to us all? For me, this the one and only, there's a very strong ethical stand. But so for ethics is not my business case. But what's even more important, I think, when you are watching the world through the glasses of ethics, you should know what are exactly the problems we face, how harsh are these problems, how can we solve these problems. So I advise everyone to go back to data, back to facts. I think reading, listening and watching facts and data is the most moral point of view you can have. So go to our world in data, see where we are already solving problems, and see where problems are emerging or problems are going out of hand. So we can go to these kind of problems to put our energy on solving these problems. So there's a very practical way of thinking of ethics. So read Immanuel Kant, and next go to our world in data and go to the data and see where the problems are and how we can solve them.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time, Dr. Ralf Bodelier from the Netherlands there. We really appreciate your perspective on the challenges we're facing and your contribution to WEEF 2022 and helping us expand our horizon today. Thank you very much.
It was great to be with you. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
So a round of applause there, please.